Okay, here we are. Thursdays at 11 is Qualified Tutor QT Conversations. Qualified Tutor's answer to the podcast. It's our opportunity as a community to share our thinking, learn from each other's experiences, and push the ideas in tutoring forward together. Today we're talking about certification. And the reason why we're doing that is because we believe that certification is the future of raising standards in tutoring. Between that and the community support that we provide, and of course the CPD, the newest, biggest, shiniest dollop of CPD is the postgraduate certificate in professional tutoring that we have just launched with the University of Worcester. Lots of interest in that course. Hello, Angie, welcome.
Hello.
Lovely to see you. So it's really timely that you're here, Angie, because I know you were in the session yesterday on certification.
Yeah.
We're talking about today. So yesterday I met with a tutor who's been a member for a long time, and we were talking about lots of things. We were talking about the PGPT, and we were talking about certification. And she said, it's just good to be audited. It feels like there's something behind you, reassuring you, checking up on you so that you're not totally alone. And that's really where the whole approach of Qualified Tutor came from, that you would have a friend to support and challenge you on your tutoring journey. And that goes beyond any specific business goal or tutoring goal or the sort of getting started thinking. It's actually much more about the sustainability. It's also, of course, a way to make you visible to parents. So when I first created Qualified Tutor 5 years ago, I realized that one of the things that really undermines our profession is the lack of trust. The lack of transparency and clarity between parents and tutors and schools causes a lack of trust in the bedrock of tutoring. And I believe that that's the case because parents don't really think of their children as learners. Many of them don't really understand education or what we're trying to achieve here, not the exam outcomes, nor the confidence building that we provide as educators. And so teaching parents to choose a tutor wisely is quite a big piece of work. And I'll tell you personally, when I look for a tutor, my heart is in my hands. Whichever of my children it is and whatever their needs are. And Emily, my eldest is 19 now. So I've now done 3 rounds of GCSEs with children, and it doesn't get easier, but they are all very different experiences. But I can tell you, when you ask a tutor to help your child, you feel very, very vulnerable. And in that moment, what you don't want to do is ask to see their DBS, which in effect is asking them, are they criminal? Now, that's not the relationship I want to have with a tutor. But I do need to know that they're not criminal. I need to know that they're safe to work with the child. When a teacher is put in front of my child at school, I know that somebody's done their due diligence. I know that before the office has issued the lanyard, that teacher has been checked for DBS. They've been put on safeguarding training. Their teaching credentials have been checked. How does a parent know the same in tutoring? And of course, all of that is because tutoring is unregulated. And there's benefits to tutoring being unregulated. Each of us work differently. Many of us have come out of a system that is really restrictive, that is really focused on accountability, that makes teachers answer for themselves so much that they actually run out of the classroom, which is a really sad thing. And again, at least twice a week, I speak to a teacher who doesn't realize that it's not just them. They literally say to me, I don't know if I'm the only one, but, and I just want to say to them, you're not the only one. I get it. I totally get it. But in the context of the situation that a parent is in, at least they know that the teacher has been vetted by the school. We do not have the same resources in tutoring until now. That's what certification is. So the Qualified Tutor certification concept comes out of our structure of making sure that tutors are safe, skilled, and supported. How do we check that you're safe? So we require you to have DBS, to be on the update service, and to be on to have daily DBS and on the update service. And what we will do then is we will check your DBS for you daily and issue your first credential that says you're still safe. You're safe today. You're safe Today, you're safe today. Because how do you scale as an online tutoring business unless you know that every one of your practitioners is continued to be safe? We don't see each other every day. Even if we did, we wouldn't know. So daily DBS on the update service, enhanced DBS, fantastic, first thing. And of course, 2 years ago, when we started offering enhanced DBS for tutors, that was the only place you could get it, because unless you're working for an organization, unless you're working in a school, you actually can't purchase an enhanced DBS, which is really counterintuitive. So tutors were even locked out of having access to that highest level of police check. So we set ourselves up as an umbrella organization in order to not give tutors a reason to not have an enhanced DBS. Yeah, well, what we're trying to do is clear the barriers for creating a level of safety that is equivalent to what's going on in the classroom. After that is insurance, because you should have it, because you're working as a freelance person and you need to take it seriously. And that's one of the things that signals seriousness. Safeguarding training, of course, and it's included in membership, but the point is that safeguarding training means that we as a culture are all keeping our eye out for keeping children safe in education, and that we as tutors need to feel that we are participants in that community of keeping children safe. It is difficult for us because very often we are right at the edge of things. You could be in a home and feel or see or hear something that doesn't feel appropriate and not know who to speak to. The answer to that frequently is many of our tutors make sure that they know what school the child goes to, so that if they needed to be in touch with the DSL, the designated safeguarding lead in the school, then that would be their first resource. Because if the only person that you know of in the child's life is the parent, it can be very difficult to build a full picture and to actually contribute as a stakeholder in the raising and in the keeping safe of that child. So knowing the school in the background can be a very helpful resource. So we've said insurance, we've said DBS, and we've said safeguarding training. The final two bits that I'm going to hand over to you are terms and conditions, policies and procedures. So many tutors we know get themselves in a tangle because they weren't clear about their cancellation policy, or they didn't know no, it's just that one. That's the best one. Oh, I know. Changing rates. You want to change your hourly rate. How do you go about doing that? Well, the answer is you do it slowly and you give them plenty of warning, and you do it in a way that, gives them opportunities to commit to you and save money at the same time, those kinds of things. So your terms and conditions, your policies and procedures, which of course should include safeguarding and GDPR, are the basics of any setup where you're working with children. Why? Because you're the trusted adult. And so you have to signal trustworthiness in everything you do. It's all about the professionalism, and the professionalism leads to the trust. And the trust, of course, leads to learning. Because if they don't trust you, how can they follow you? Finally, verified client reviews. I talked about safe, skilled, and supported. And for me, that's the closest thing in the certification process that we can get to evaluating somebody's skill. By seeing that somebody has 5 students who have worked with them in the past and can say, yes, that was good. Yeah. When we list that on the directory, that combination of those 5 things is like the multivitamin for parents that says everything you need is included in this. And that for me has always been the goal, is to simplify what it all means so that parents don't have to think about it too much. It's a kite mark. You wouldn't use a light bulb that didn't have the British Standards kite mark on it, because you would know that it's probably dangerous. You shouldn't use a tutor that hasn't been certified, because we don't know that they're safe. More than that, I can't say. I'm very, very careful with my language. I'm certainly not looking to scaremonger, but there are horrible stories that happen. And the most that we can do as a community is to guard against those by helping parents to work with safe tutors.
And would we be allowed to get references from organisations that has employed us to tutor.
In some cases, that can work.
Uh,
And
um,
actually, Elizabeth,
because
hold on a second. Hold on.
yeah,
This is not a conversation where we're going to go into each person's specific scenarios and
then
answering those questions. That's what
they,
we did yesterday in the workshop.
I just want to ask, like, uh, would I be able to get certified and use the organisation that I've worked with?
We'll discuss that on a case by case basis with you. So I can discuss it with you after this conversation.
Okay, okay,
Okay. And the reason for that is that really we need to know that you're an effective tutor. It's
uh,
not whether you're an effective employee, it's specifically about tutoring.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
we'll dig in that together and I'll be happy to talk it through with you.
Okay,
Okay. But the questions that I prepared for today's session, and I don't usually give so much preamble, but otherwise there would be no context for this thinking, for the thinking that we're going to do together now. So the questions that I wanted to ask you were firstly, what challenges did you encounter during your certification journey, and how did overcoming them shape your tutoring practice? Now, Emily, you recently became certified, which is so exciting. Angie, you and Elizabeth are both on the way. And Angie, you and I had a conversation yesterday that I hope you're going to allow me to bring up again today, because I think it's really, really important. But Emily, if you don't mind starting us off by telling us um, the journey of becoming certified, what has that meant for you?
I think certainly kind of moving from being very recently in an environment in a school, like you said, where kind of essentially everything's done for you, isn't it? You don't really have to consider any of that. I think it just makes you take a step back and think about, um, kind of things like writing my own policies is not something that really, I mean, I'd done some school policies before that I'd done before and kind of had ownership of. And there is certainly a sense, I think, kind of being vulnerable. There's a sense of vulnerability in it, isn't there? Because you are independent, you are doing it yourself. We know as educators how crucial safeguarding is. We know it like the back of our hand and how diligent we have to be and how vigilant we have to be. GDPR again, things like that, safeguarding, terms and conditions. I'll be honest, at the start of the journey, it feels scary
Mm,
because it feels very, this is on paper, this is, there's legislation around this, it's black and white, it's mine, it's got to be right. And so in doing that, it was that there's a fear in doing it, I think, certainly. What was really helpful for me was in joining qualified tutors is kind of the guidance with that and the examples and the sort of you're not starting with a blank piece of paper thinking, oh my goodness, where do I even begin with this? Actually, you've got some structures, you've got some things to kind of base them on. And that was really, really useful for me in kind of setting up and becoming, well, just certified.
yeah.
Yeah, and I think also that the testimonial element of it is really important. And again, I think what's been really quite nice, refreshing for me personally is on the journey of being certified is certainly again the pace of working in a school and seeing however many students day in, day out, and having so many conversations. It's not until you pause and step away from that that it's quite in probably quite a self-indulgent way, it's quite nice to step and reflect and think, do you know what? I do and have had such an impact and leaving my role in
Angie, are you listening?
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
magic. Go on.
yeah, and I think leaving my role again, I don't. We're not used to blowing our own trumpets, are we? But leaving my previous role only sort of Easter time, and the emails and the messages you have, you kind of just pause and think, oh my goodness. And again, I'm not. This certainly isn't coming from an arrogant place at all. I'm just being honest in that we don't pause and stop and reflect and think, yes, I have impact. And so gathering testimonials from students and parents in terms of tutoring and kind of the impact you have is I think really a really important part of the process, isn't it? And actually, I don't know, kind of really quite a pleasant kind of journey into tutoring to think about impact that you have on young people and their lives
Really,
and their progress.
Brilliant. You've given me two
Uh,
really juicy threads to pull on
oh,
now.
good.
So here we go.
Good.
Okay. So in terms of policies and procedures, what I learned as a school leader is the best policies describe your best day. This is how we do things here, is what a policy should be. So it's almost that you look at what you're doing and you draw a ring around it and you say, this is how this is us-ish, this is how we do things. And I think that process becomes really informative when it's not boilerplate. Intentionally in QT we don't give you templates to copy and sign, because there has to be a process of thinking sitting behind it. In the same way that you don't want your students to buy flashcards, you want them to make flashcards, because that's actually where the learning sits. And I think that's that's a lovely process that you went from this is scary and black and white and formalized to, with support, I can actually make something make sense to me. I hope you use ChatGPT to help you.
Yes, that is the most incredible thing ever. And again, I'll be honest, it's not something that in my previous role, because I'm an English teacher, I remember speaking to a lot of the younger
Yeah.
English staff, and I sound like but some of the sort of really young English staff say, "Oh my goodness, Emily, have you seen this model answer at a grade 9 that it's written for me?" And these are the sorts of things that we'd spend an hour doing, writing a grade 9 model answer for,
Yeah.
half an hour doing, or but yes, it has been my best friend over the past 2 to 3 months. Yeah, it's amazing.
Isn't it interesting that,
Yeah, it's
because I think the bit that you didn't quite say, but I think you were implying, was that AI feels threatening when you're an English teacher in a school because of cheating, because is it going to give the wrong information, because it's going to give a model answer, but is it going to be the right model answer, and are you going to spot the errors in it before you put it in front of children? All
yeah.
of those things feel like risk. In this case, what's happening is an iterative process. You say to ChatGPT, generate this policy, and then you read it and you say, no, make that adjustment, make that adjustment. And actually it becomes a partner in the creative process.
I think it's so intuitive, isn't it, in terms of tone, and actually I think the questions it then asks you in terms of your character, your personality, the business values that you have, your approach, it is incredibly intuitive.
Yeah, and it's so funny because you may not know this about me, but I am thoroughly ADHD and becoming more ADHD with perimenopause, which is fun. But what that means is that I'm not good at giving all the proper prompts that social media keeps telling me I'm supposed to do with AI, but it seems to be coping with me, and that's fine. Okay, let's move on to the second one. It's a funny thing, isn't it? Because the customer's always right, but you're an educator. And in our context, the customer is not entirely always right. Not the child, not the parent, not the school. We know what we're doing, and we're paying attention to what we're doing. And actually, our big goal is to be answerable only to ourselves, or to be surrounded by peers who can moderate our practice. But currently, we're in a situation where people don't see me tutor. I mean, there's always people coming in and out of my house. But when I'm sitting here with a student, it's a bubble.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so how do I evaluate my good practice? And certainly, how do I evidence my good practice? Well, one of the best ways is through the testimonials. And the testimonials, I genuinely have mountains of thank you cards in my office, because I'm an absolute baby and they give me such a thrill. But I do feel that we have to teach parents to say thank you, because it's the best gift they can give us. Because if it means that then you fill up next year's schedule based on the testimonials of this year's students, that's the closest you can get to actually being employed for your value. I have a proven track record, and therefore I get to build an even better track record. I get to keep going because I do a good job. That's what we want as tutors. Now, Angie, when we spoke yesterday about the process of getting certified, and that was that sort of nitty-gritty technical conversation that Elizabeth was, hinting to before, that we're not going to go into now, but you said it's a little bit nerve-wracking asking for client reviews. Actually, you didn't say that. Actually, you didn't say that. You said, I don't want to trouble them. Go ahead.
Yeah, I did. I said the families that I work with are under tremendous strain because they are not their children aren't in education. They're fighting a system that is falling apart and doesn't have school places for them. And I didn't want to, and they have enough form filling and letter writing. I didn't want to put another thing on their shoulders.
I love the empathy in that. As a parent of more than one EBSA send and neuro everything children, the form filling is killer. The letter writing, the advocacy, having to be that person all the time is killer. But what I told you yesterday, and I will tell it to you again, is you are not on the taking side of things, you're on the giving side of things. In my home, people like you are the people that I'm so grateful to, because they're there for my child. And if you ask me to do something for you, if it's a slice of cake or it's a testimonial, I would be more than glad to be able to give back in any way. Do you know what I mean? I'm not being soppy. I'm really telling you that's how it feels for the parent.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit like, just in general life, accepting a compliment rather than dismissing it.
Emily, could you speak to that for a second, please?
Yeah, so I think it really, Angela, when you said about kind of they've got so much on their plate and things, I think actually I kind of echo what Julia said. Before Julia said it, I was just thinking, you're in the parent's head, and I don't want to kind of split parties, but in terms of their perception, you're the hero, you're the angel, and so it would, exactly like Julia said, sort of as a parent as well. And my children aren't in school yet, but. I actually think how that will be received is very much not how you think it may be received. I think possibly, Angie, quite the opposite. And of course, absolutely we will do that for you, and it will be glowing, I'm sure.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
That was very Dee, can you confirm that you're not allowed to talk because you're driving, please? Okay. Well, then we will just be grateful that your smiling face is here. We will do our best not to distract you. She's on the motorway. But she's slightly addicted to QT conversations, which we love. So I think what I wanted to ask you next is about the way that you, and this is specifically to you, Emily, as the only certified member who can talk in this meeting. The question is how you anticipate that certification will influence the trust and communication you have with the students and their families.
Well, I anticipate that it will improve that. I think it's hard to say, isn't it, when it's kind of so early since I've been certified. But I think perhaps sort of even more broadly, and I'm kind of working at the moment on starting to become more visible in terms of kind of LinkedIn, social media, etc., because a lot of my tutoring is online. So at the moment, in terms of my UK clients have relied, it's tended to be kind of word of mouth or friend of a friend of a friend, or neighbours, or some neighbours down the road that have got, friends in London so I think kind of just to broaden your presence and validate your quality, essentially. That's what it is, isn't it? Because I know on paper that I tick all of these boxes, and I can vouch for myself and say to a parent, you can trust me, I care about your child and I will do a good job in terms of their learning. But it's a badge, isn't it? It's a tick box that is, as a parent, kind of a sense of security, I guess.
Yeah.
So hopefully in the future it will then, it will really help to kind of, for me to grow and gain more clients, essentially.
That's exactly the goal. It's that reassurance that you can give to parents at the front of it. Yeah. I think it's something else as well. So we spoke before about the process developing the terms and conditions, policies and procedures. And I wonder whether there's an element, and Dee, I know that you've been through this in the past, of once you are clear about what your T&Cs are, you find they get challenged less. It's a little bit like behavior management with kids, right? The more confident you are, the less they test your confidence.
Yeah,
There's,
definitely.
there's something about that process of you defining what your terms and conditions are, what your red lines are,
Mm,
that I feel gives you confidence that you've got answers. If somebody asks, you've got the answers.
mm.
Does that ring true?
Yeah, and I think there's also an element of, I think, kind of having anyone challenge your T's and C's and things like that. So I've had a scenario where I was tutoring someone, a year 11 student, for the past, let's say, 8 weeks, and they've just finished with me. And given the nature of having just set up and kind of taken on clients, but I was kind of finalizing T's and C's, so I took people on that I knew through other people. But kind of midway through, had to just say, given that I'm essentially a new business, I'm now just sharing my T's and C's. And there was some kind of back and forth with that, and some not challenging conversations at all, but some conversations that I maybe didn't anticipate. But actually, it's kind of essentially it's that idea. I don't know if I'm going a bit too far here, but that idea of building that trust with parents and having there was a bit of rupture and repair really, and then actually now the relationship and the trust that we have, because I'm continuing in September with that child, sorry, with their brother, is really is much stronger essentially.
My gosh, no, this is really juicy. Could I get trouble
Mm.
you, of course, with all the confidentiality in place to give us a little bit more information about where the rupture and repair was?
So it was around a student who was not in school in year 11 but had an English language exams, and they had been off school for about 6 months. So they've been having kind of some additional support, partial timetable, and actually then I was doing initially weekly sessions, but then closer to the exams I was doing maybe 3 4 hours a week in the day to really support and try and prepare them as best as I could for the English language exams. And this parent was obviously my main point of communication. And she was working in the day, and we'd arranged an extra session which the student hadn't turned up to. And I waited sort of 15 minutes. They didn't turn up, but I hadn't at that point shared my T's and C's because I hadn't finalised them. So it was a bit of a sticky
Yeah, we're
end.
with you.
So we just had a conversation around it, and she was very apologetic, and I kind of I was clear, and I kind of had boundaries, but I also understood that I hadn't shared my T's and C's. So we kind of had that conversation. I shared them, and actually following them, it's similar in kind of any environment, isn't it? But I then notice you just kind of intuitively notice a shift in your communication and a shift in your relationship. And it's for the better, really.
Did you get paid?
Yeah,
Brilliant.
yeah,
Yeah. That
yeah.
is really, really solid. One of our members published a blog recently. And actually, it's so funny because somebody emailed me about this blog. I need to follow up with them. Somebody, Lucy Mabaki in our community, wrote a blog about not getting paid. A family that she'd worked with, and they had really betrayed her trust, and she hadn't been paid, and she found it really demoralizing. And she actually took it to a small claims court. And after about 18 months, she got paid. And and of course, the money was important, and she said, it particularly helped when it did finally arrive. But that wasn't the point. The point was that she had felt small and vulnerable, and she decided not to be. And that journey that we go through, I think, is really, really profound.
Mm,
And the phrase rupture and repair is so powerful
mm.
because of the sense of getting stronger. Now, there's one more question. And again, I'm afraid you're going to have to work the hardest of us. I want to know about how the certification process has changed your perspective on professional development and accountability.
I think hugely. I mean, certainly over the past few weeks, professional development has been something that's kind of been whizzing round my head from a point of view in that, again, in a school environment, you're very, I mean, I kind of led on quality of education, so I was at the forefront of kind of CPD and things, but certainly as a teacher in a school, you kind of tick along, and actually without realizing the opportunities that you have professional development wise are really good, in a good school, in terms of collaboration with colleagues, sharing best practice, going and seeing people's lessons, and actually formal CPD sessions as well. You're continually, often even subconsciously, kind of absorbing, aren't you, and developing and changing and growing. And I've been very, very aware as a tutor of essentially, to some degree, the lack of that. not lack of, but certainly having to make a conscious effort to ensure that it's still part of my practice essentially in my life and my work, my professional life, because you're not in it and it doesn't kind of happen for you. And so certainly being part of the community has been really good. And I guess sort of being certified, yeah, I think it provides a degree of accountability. I know a short while back actually when I first joined QT, I kind of, and I couldn't make the call where you discussed it, but I suggested sort of some, is there any way that
Yes,
we
you
can,
did.
yeah, I did. So that was
Yes,
me that I
that's
said,
funny. It was just in my mind there
yeah,
before you said
you
it.
know, that might be a great thing. And I know there's probably lots that needs to be looking at to do that appropriately. But actually, isn't that the best way that we
But we haven't been clear. What we're talking about is that a few months ago, Emily put in the community, can I do some observations of other people? And I'd be really happy for you to observe me as well. And I jumped in because it's a project that I've been trying, that I have thought about for quite a while, but I feel that it needs to be baked properly so that people are safe and children are safe. And also that you don't get somebody who comes in, observes you and is really rude. And that you don't, go in and observe somebody else and think, what's going on here and not know where to put that information. So I felt that it needed some structure and guidance and leadership around it. But the principle of it is to observe each other, to observe and to learn from each other. And Dee, I know that you're well up for that kind of thing. Angie and Elizabeth, I hope you would be as well, because it's definitely a project that we need to get off the ground. So thank you for putting it back on the
Oh,
table.
no worries. Yeah, no, it's something that I'd be really interested in being a part of. But also from a CPD point of view, I think one thing in terms um of the since I've become a tutor is previously because I was in leadership role, and actually the irony of that even in kind of teaching and learning is that you pulled away from your subject. And what's been really nice is even yesterday I just sat and had a look and some text and thought, you know what? I'm going to reread this to reread it because I now even more than ever need to be at the top of my game in terms of my subject knowledge. And that's refreshing to think I'm going to sit and read a text about how to most effectively teach Macbeth, or, I'm going to reread something because I can and because that's really important to invest in. So that's quite exciting.
It really is exciting. That whole, coming out of that done for you world and learning to guide your own professional practice, guide your own professional development, take responsibility, see what's missing, do it yourself. It's a lot. It's important. It's helpful. It's autonomy. It's a lot. And so, structures around that, support around that, encouragement, book clubs, anything that you can find that's, either subject specific or just more generally that's going to help you to continue to engage with yourself as a learner, or remind yourself how to be. I spoke to one tutor once who said, I hated school leadership because I didn't feel like I was growing anymore. And there's something so powerful about how granular your attention to your subject can become when you are tutoring. You're so close with it. You're not distracted with classroom management. You get to really, really zone in on your material.
Yeah.
And especially, and Dee, I can see you nodding away, when you're making material accessible to a young person who doesn't get the material. Emily, I feel like yours is quite on the academic side of things.
Yeah.
Angie and Dee are more coming from helping a child into, in Dee's case, maths, in Angie's case, school or life or functioning or all of these things, right? And Elizabeth, the same. It's quite an amazing thing how you get to become laser focused. I often say that tutors look like mind readers a lot of the time. And that's because there are fewer distractions, so you can really focus on the child and the subject. Yeah. Okay. I just wanted to finish up with, I want to sort of start wrapping up now. And Emily, you've been really, really fantastic today because you've done all the heavy lifting. But I want to open this question out to everyone now. Somebody said to me yesterday, I don't know if I've mentioned this on this call or if Emily, you and I said it beforehand. A tutor said to me yesterday, it feels good to be audited. And what she meant was it makes her feel less vulnerable and reassured.
Wow.
Gives her confidence. I know, Elizabeth, right? So Angie, are you able to speak first to that idea of, it doesn't feel good to be judged and micromanaged, but it does feel good to be audited? What are your thoughts on that?
I like that. I'm just going to bring in the lesson observation thing.
Yeah.
It's the last school that I worked in, sort of lesson observation was couched in, if you were struggling with something, it wasn't couched in sort of CB, it wasn't it was almost like a negative thing. You felt like you'd done something wrong. Oops. It was awful. And then just to hear that, that actually people, because I love watching other people. I love watching sort of like, where you've got some examples of, because I watch sort of like American teachers or Australia, I'm a magpie, I'll pick it up and whatever I can. And I learn so much. And, we do the formal stuff, but actually that observation stuff, but that anyway, I've just gone on aside from that. But I think that it just taps into that auditing, it's about respecting yourself. It's about actually having the confidence to actually say, actually, I believe in my values and this is what I stand for, and this is how I want to work, and I'm going to take that risk of working like that. But the auditing shows me that it's okay. So it almost like that self-doubt that comes in. I've probably waffled. I'm not very good at explaining myself.
You're very good. That's why I keep dragging you back in, Angie. You're very good because that piece around self-respect is immense, where you're saying, and it's what we started describing, that a good policy describes what you do. Yeah, that's a really confident place to be. So, Angie, for you to say, I know what my values are, I know how I do things, I'm going to write it down. And anybody who wants to read it, it's there. And Emily, I forgot to say right at the beginning, the other part of that, don't worry about the black and whiteness of it all, is it's an iterative process. You should always be reviewing and improving your policies.
Yeah, and I already, when you said about on a good day, I now want to go back to them already.
Oh, that's so funny. So I think that on a good day bit is important. Unfortunately, when we describe kids, we're doing EHCP applications at the moment, you have to describe them on their worst day.
Yes, you do.
So let's all do ourselves the favor and remember the best days as well, right? So Elizabeth, I think that you wanted to say something about that process of being audited.
Yeah, it sounds interesting because then you aren't alone.
Because you're not alone.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. Yeah, that's really lovely. It's that, and it's the support and the challenge of you're not alone, but this is on you. You've got the agency here. You're not employed by anyone, but you've got someone who's here to help.
Yeah.
Gee, have you pulled over?
I have.
Come on then, dive in just before we wrap up.
I
Say
was
all the things.
Yes, QT certification. It was the biggest thing for me, and this may already have been said because obviously I missed the first part of the conversation, was the realization of how many boxes I already ticked. And I remember sitting in your kitchen with Odette talking about this, and I was talking about certification and whether I had enough to do, and it turned out I'd already hit everything for mastery without even realizing it. And that was a huge confidence boost for me to know that Qualified Tutor had established a framework, had established some benchmarks, and I was clearing them with ease, which was just amazing. That validation was so helpful for me as a tutor. I believed I was doing a good job, but now I really believed I was doing a good job, and I had a badge to show whoever wanted to see it that I was ticking all of these boxes as well. Coming to lesson observations, my experience of observations in the 2 years I was in the classroom were not great. because I felt judged. There was a much more experienced teacher who did provide some really helpful feedback. I was, those 2 years, one as an NQT and then one as a, well, rabbit in headlights, were hard, but I got some really good feedback. But the really important stuff I did was when working at the Maritime Academy, which was part of a university, where observations were not allowed, were frowned upon, but they introduced something called peer practice exchange, where people would agree to go and observe each other. And I would go to watch another teacher, another lecturer, and very often I was able to provide some really helpful feedback, ways that they could improve their practice. But I would learn from them as well. And this two-way process is so, so important. That feeling of being, it's a balance, it's a give and a take. I've come to help you, but if you come with an open mindset, you will learn something from watching somebody else teach, because it may well, you pick up on, oh yeah, they're doing that. Actually, I should be doing that. And I've slipped into a bad habit doing something a bit different. So it's such a powerful thing. If it's managed really, really well, it is such a powerful tool for professional development.
I'm going to ask you more about peer practice exchange. I think that's really, really helpful. That sounds like it's probably very close to the structure that we need. So thank you,
I
Dee.
love that phrase, peer practice exchange. That's perfect, isn't it?
Everything about it is good, isn't it?
PPE, though.
PPE, that's a degree I didn't do. But you also said about the confidence. You mentioned mastery, and I'll explain what that means in a minute. But I noticed recently that your email signature just screams with confidence. I am a mastery qualified, certified professional tutor. You've got your credential on your email signature, and it says so much. And it's effortless, isn't it? Because it's just there. Now, Mastery is a program that we built. Emily, I don't know if you've come across this yet. So what we did was, after certification, we wanted to give you a structure to continue to stretch. So we built a program which we call awards, and we award a foundation, advanced, and mastery level based on your safety levels, your skill levels, and how supported and engaged you are in the communities. And in terms of skill, we're looking to see whether you've got a degree in your subject, whether you've got years in the classroom or years in tutoring. We're always really mindful that somebody can achieve mastery without QTS. That's very, very important to us. You do not need to be a teacher to be a tutor. But then it doesn't harm either. So just going through that process of evaluating, and as a points-based structure that just evaluates where you're up to and then makes recommendations about what your next point might be. There's one thing that I'm really proud of that's in there. In the section on supportiveness, it's not only are you an active member of a community, do you coach and support other tutors, there's also an element in there on volunteering. Because we believe that being part of a community means giving back as well. So, for example, for every handful of students that I take on, there tends to be one that's pro bono. And that feels right to me. That's the right way for me to give back. So whatever it is that you're doing to sort of donate your time or your expertise in tutoring, that's also recognized. And I feel that that's a real forward moving idea, and keeps us in a healthy space, which is good for our souls. So yes, peer practice exchange, yes, email signature, yes, walking tall with confidence, Dee. Emily, I've left the last words to you.
Okay, I had some thoughts and then they've just gone because
Sorry.
so I'm just thinking about what Dee was saying and about what Angie was saying around CPD. It's completely gone. What I was going to say? Oh, I think this is what it was. It was something that Angie said around, I think Angie said to me, I know I'm good and I know I'm doing the right thing, and about having this framework and a degree of validation, I think was the word that she used. And I think Dee also used that word as well. I think one thing that has just, again, kind of been going around my head a little bit is this idea of being a lone ranger and knowing in your heart and in your gut what is going to work and what isn't going to work and what really you want to try and do, but having this sense of should and having this idea of, you know, and actually I felt this especially when I tutor 3 boys in Beijing, and some of them study IB, and that for me is a bit of a new world. So I'm kind of trying to get my head around that. And actually, in terms of academia and the level, you know, I've got a lad in year 7, but I mean, I may as well just be teaching GCSE stuff. He's really sort of which is great, but it's this idea of when I'm planning, thinking, right, okay, so I should be doing that, but knowing in my gut actually no, that's going to be right. And the first time I went with my should, and the second time I went with my no, I know what's right, and it worked. And I think the validation is even more important because you don't have it in those scenarios. No one sees, you know, no one saw that exchange or the learning process or my lesson apart from myself and the student. But I think QT is great. Like now, this is brilliant to have this arena to have these conversations, but also from a CPD point of view to kind of bounce these ideas around, but also I think that, like Dee said, the value in sharing. And I think that the key for me, certainly coming from a leadership role, and it's so interesting to hear people's experience of observations, because I was an assistant head where I mean, I loved being in school leadership and I love kind of leading on teaching and learning, but the sore point was always, well, how do we quality assure? What does that look like? And actually, it's a really tricky one. And going in as an inexperienced assistant head about 7 years ago, and essentially having a framework that I followed because I was told to follow it, but not being popular with staff at all because it felt threatening because we were a school where we were in a quite a challenging situation, to then actually that evolve and being a school where things had shifted and and it's not about Ofsted at all, but we then were good from not being in a great situation at all, and outcomes and progress had improved and students were happy and safe and thriving. It allowed that transition then to be much more essentially low threat. And so I think from my point of view as a tutor, and certainly my experience as being a teacher and being observed, being a leader and observing, and actually thinking about all of that and how that feels and how that's received, is I think Dee was saying, you know, that the value of that kind of interaction, and that I'll come and essentially watch what you're doing. And yes, I will give some feedback, but actually I'll learn loads from it. It being kind of that sort of cycle, but also I think being really low threat is important. And actually it's about learning and it's about what can we gain from each other, and actually kind of that growth mindset of, you know, there's always going to be things that it's not a mistake, but it's something that we can tweak and put right. And I think the values and the approach and the principles by which we do that is really, really crucial. Yeah.
My mind is slightly spinning, and I feel like if there was a mic, you could drop it. I think that it's so interesting the way you referred to Ofsted's place in that journey. You know, because of the threat that they provided, that then trickles down in every direction, doesn't it? Through you to the teachers, even the children, of course, and that you came out of those special measures, but that's not what mattered. But then the children were happy and thriving and safe. And really interesting how we are very, very mindful as an organization to create an auditing process that is supportive and not threatening. Because there are tutors making a difference every single day, and our goal is to enable them. And so going through this journey of making sure that whatever it is that we're asking tutors to do helps them to walk taller. Really interesting. And sitting alongside that, certainly for you as somebody, everybody in this room, somebody who's come out of the classroom, there's a process of unlearning. I was doing yesterday with a student that gorgeous book, The Boy, the Fox, the Mole and the Horse.
Oh yeah.
I can never get them in the right order, but it says early on in that book, is there a school to unlearn? Yeah. And there's something in what you've just described there that is about unlearning. It's taking away the tension and the threat and introducing it back with this sense of confidence and professionalism. And it's actually a really beautiful journey because we're in control, because it's all about your own agency, in the best of ways, in the same way that we want for our children. So on those lovely notes, I am going to wrap up. I'm going to beg you, Emily, to ring fence Thursdays at 11 o'clock, please.
Yeah, I know.
And Angie.
Right.
because it's better with you here. It's really
Mhm.
better. And that moment that you just described earlier of like, I've got all these ideas whizzing around my head. Yeah. And it actually took you a moment to decide which ones to pull on.
Mm.
That's what learning feels like in this space. And
Mm.
it's like nothing else. And it's making a difference. And people message me all the time that they watch and listen to these recordings. So thank you for your contribution to it. Thanks so much, Angie. Thank you, Dee, for making it last minute. Thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you, Emily. If you're not yet a QT community member, you can go to qualifiedtutor.org and find out more about that. And if you are a member and you're not certified yet, you've just heard 350 reasons why you should be. So get on with it. Have a lovely weekend to everybody. I hear it's going to be crazy hot tomorrow. So sunscreen,
Wow.
lots of water. All the best. Thanks.
Bye.
Well done.
Thank you. Bye.
Julian.
Hold on.